Just 5 minutes ago, Nigel Farage did what no one else in Parliament dared to do. With the whole nation watching, he stood tall, looked Starmer in the eye, and dropped a political bombshell demanding a new general election. Right there on the floor of the House. Silence fell, jaws dropped, and in that moment, something historic happened. The old political order cracked. Britain held its breath, because this was the shot that could change everything. Nigel Farage didn't walk into Parliament today. He stormed in like a man on a mission, not to debate, not to negotiate, but to confront. With millions of frustrated voters behind him, he rose, stared straight into the eyes of Keir Starmer, and did the unthinkable. He demanded a general election, not next year, not in some polite timetable. Now, instantly. No hesitation, no games. The chamber froze. The usual jeers and murmurs. Gone. What followed was silence so thick it felt like history was holding its breath. And then he spoke, not as a polished politician, but as a man who had finally had enough. Enough of the lies. Enough of the betrayals. Enough of watching Britain slide deeper into the hands of those who don't listen, don't care, and don't act. He didn't sugarcoat his words. He didn't spin his message. He tore straight through the heart of Westminster's decaying walls and said exactly what the people have been screaming from their homes, their workplaces, and their streets. This government has no mandate. It has no soul. And it has no right to rule anymore. This wasn't just a political speech. It was a declaration. A lightning bolt that shattered the stale, tired duopoly of Labour and the Tories. Farage said what no one else would, that the game is rigged, that both sides have betrayed Britain in different costumes, that our votes have become currency for the powerful, traded in backrooms, ignored after elections, forgotten once the cameras are gone. Starmer, the so-called voice of reason, sat, frozen, stone-faced, calculating, but inside, everyone saw it, the fear, the panic, the realization that the mask had finally slipped. He didn't respond because he couldn't. What could he say to the truth? How do you argue when someone lays out your failures, your silence over rising costs, your betrayal of veterans, your weakness on borders, your backdoor deals, all of it, right there under the lights of Parliament? And then came the thunder, not from the opposition benches, but from the Reform UK MPs who rose to their feet in applause. Not just out of loyalty, but because they knew something had changed. The tide had turned. This wasn't a fringe moment. It was a movement, and it had just found its voice in the loudest possible place. Farage didn't stop there. He pulled back the curtain on Starmer's most shameful move, the quiet handover of the Chagos Islands. A deal made in secrecy, a decision that stripped Britain of power, of history, and of pride, just to satisfy unelected elites and foreign bureaucrats. Not a word spoken in Parliament, no vote, no debate. Just another example of how far the current government will go to please the globalist class, even if it means betraying their own country. But Farage said it loud, clear, and with fire. In his eyes, this is not leadership, this is surrender. And Britain deserves better. Sovereignty is not for sale. Our people are not pawns. And the time for silence is over. The numbers prove it. Reform UK is no longer a protest vote. They're leading in the polls to 30% and rising. Labour is stagnating, the Tories are imploding, and for the first time in modern British history, an outsider party is not just knocking on the door, they're kicking it off its hinges. The media tried to bury this story. They mocked reform, called them extreme, dismissed them as noise. But the real noise, it's coming from the people, from the families who can't afford food, the pensioners choosing between heat and medicine, the young who see no future in a system rigged for the elite. These aren't just headlines. These are lives, and they've had enough. Farage's speech was for them, for the forgotten, for the ignored, for the broken and the betrayed. He didn't just ask for a general election, he demanded it. Not as a privilege for the powerful, but as a right for the people, the right to choose, the right to change, the right to be heard. And now, that demand is echoing beyond Parliament's walls. It's in every pub conversation, every work kitchen, every crowded train and council estate. The question is no longer if there will be a snap election. The question is whether Westminster can stop the rising wave before it sweeps them all away. The old order is cracking. The Labour and Tory elites are scrambling. They thought they could silence reform with ridicule. They thought Farage would fade like before. But this time is different. The people are done being polite, done waiting, done believing promises that never come true. And when Farage stood up today, he didn't just challenge a prime minister, he challenged an entire system. And he did it with the power of millions standing right behind him. Parliament has seen many speeches, but this one may go down in history as the speech that broke the dam, that ended the illusion, that called out the lie and demanded something better. Because the truth is simple, the country is broken, the people are angry, and change isn't coming quietly, it's coming like a storm. And Nigel Farage just rang the first thunderclap.